Welcome to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Tom Nelson, and I know firsthand as a family caregiver and part of the sandwich generation how tough it can be to take care of your aging parents while balancing your own life, career, and family. We'll bring you the experts and information necessary to help make your life a little bit easier and you a little bit smarter. Synergy Sessions is brought to you by Synergy Home Care, bringing you personalized in-home care and peace of mind to Silicon Valley families. I really do hope you enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. Today, I'm super excited to have Dale Corpus as our guest. You may know Dale as a podcast host himself, but his day job is Dale Corpus is a senior transition specialist with EXP Realty, real estate expertise, senior focused heart. The tagline here, I love, it's I help families navigate one of life's biggest transitions with compassion, clarity, and a game plan that works, because the move isn't about just selling a house. It's about making space for what's next. And I couldn't resonate with this more. I went through a process of selling my parents' house and going through that process. And I'm in the industry, and I fortunately have a lot of connections and resources, but Dale's one of my go-to guys, and I'm just excited to have him here today to explain his process and how he helps people during kind of one of the most kind of vulnerable and overwhelming times trying to work with real estate in time of crisis. Thanks for being on the podcast, Dale.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tom. Thanks for that intro.
Well, like I said, I mean, you are now really making a splash as a podcast host yourself. And I think you've got at this point, over 150 episodes, but I just want to make sure people know, where that all started, and you are a go-to in the senior kind of resource space, but want to make sure we highlight what you do specifically. So maybe you can just start off with telling us about kind of your role with EXP and as a senior transition specialist and what your company does in general. And we'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me as a guest. And I just wanted to start off with, I mean, a lot of people nowadays are maybe finding me off my podcast or on social media, but just quick backstory. I've been in the real estate and mortgage industry since 2001. And yes, I'm a realtor, but I'm more than just your regular realtor. I'm a senior real estate expert, senior transition specialist. And that means I help families who are navigating major life changes with aging parents. So whether that's moving to assisted living or downsizing or even dealing with a home after a death of a family member or figuring out how to fund care. So my business, it focuses on simplifying those transitions, and real estate is a part of it, but oftentimes I'm helping families really understand their options, connect them with trusted senior care professionals, and kind of like create a plan so they don't feel like they're making rushed decisions in like crisis mode, because these moments are very, very stressful. And so just also quick backstory, because people may not know this about me. I started getting more intrigued about the senior care space because my dad, about 3 years ago, was diagnosed with mild dementia. I have two sisters in healthcare. One is a physical therapist. That's my older sister. And my younger sister is a nurse. I assumed that, they would know everything about like caregiving, because at that time, my dad was starting to need a caregiver, but they didn't know. They didn't know how it all worked, or, where to go, who to trust, what was even available to even fund it. And then me just kind of being that problem solver and just trying to figuring out to connect the dots, I was like, I think I can help. And that's also when I started just delving into just senior care and learning all about it. And I didn't need to do this, but I ended up getting my RCFE certificate, which is it stands for the Residential Care Facility for the Elderly. And that's the same certificate that you get if you were to open up like a residential boarding care home or even run one of the bigger city communities.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great kind of segue. So you said RCFE, and then there's the SRES.
Yeah.
So maybe delve into those and how it relates to how a senior real estate specialist is different than just a regular realtor that you might encounter.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So most realtors, they understand, well, I should say this. All realtors understand houses, okay?
Yeah.
Most senior care professionals understand care. I happen to be trained in both worlds. So
Hmm.
I have an SRES realtor designation. So SRES, for those that aren't familiar with that term, it stands for Seniors Real Estate Specialists. And that
Hmm.
just means I understand, again, the real estate side of senior
Hmm.
transitions, what seniors go through with financial implications, market strategies, timing, and how to handle situations like, again, downsizing, probate,
Yeah.
selling a lifelong family time home.
Hmm.
And then, as I mentioned just earlier on, I have my RCFB certificate, and that training is really unique. That's the certification. Again, we're required to run and manage residential care homes and
Hmm.
assist living communities in California. So
Got
I
it.
understand how senior care actually works,
Hmm.
how it works behind the scenes. In fact, like
Right.
levels of care, regulations, staffing, and what drives costs, and what
Hmm.
families should realistically expect. I
Okay.
mean, it was just as like one of the things that just really caught me off guard when I was getting my RCFE certificate is just the cost of
Hmm.
of how much care costs, whether you're getting even a private home caregiver or just,
Yeah.
full-time assisted living. My jaw
Yeah.
dropped. So,
Yeah.
and I don't, and I mean, a lot of times, so now when I'm sitting down with a family, we're not just talking about square footage and cops. We're talking about like how
Hmm.
care is going to be paid for, what living options might make sense for mom or dad, and the emotional attachment to the home. I know
Yeah.
seniors sometimes fear losing independence, and kind of how
Yes.
all of that connects to the real estate decision. So I feel like the combination helps me see the big picture and not just the
Hmm.
property. And I could help families make decisions both for their financial future and their loved ones' care needs, not just getting this house sold.
Right. Right. And and many times, like I had mentioned, I just went through that process with my parents and my childhood home and going through that. Fortunately, I'm local. My brother and sister are out of the area, and that's the case with a lot of people. So not only are you being overwhelmed by this whole process, you're not even in the same state.
Right.
So maybe that this might be a good point to like walk through like what a typical senior transition and maybe with the overlay of if they're local, but also maybe they're not. How do you kind of help them start this process? Like how do people work with you and how do you kind of walk them down the
Yeah.
path to make sure they make the right decisions?
Yeah. Really, really good question. As we all both agree, I mean, as we both agree, it's like emotionally it's heavy. Um,
Mhm,
the adult children they're often grieving change before anything has even happened, right? And
uh-huh,
there's a lot of emotions. You're feeling like guilt and stress, and there's even the family dynamics, the sibling dynamics, family dynamics,
mhm,
and financially, families are often again shocked at the cost of care and suddenly trying to
mhm,
figure out, do we use our savings? Do we even have
mhm,
enough cash for assisted living? And should we sell the house? Should we rent it or use long term care insurance? So
mhm,
logistically, there's a lot.
mhm,
Sorting decades of belongings, coordinating medical like needs,
mhm,
legal documents, prepping the home, and sometimes moving under time pressure.
mhm.
You know, it's not one decision, it's like 20 decisions happening at once, and that's why, like,
Yeah.
guidance matters, and especially when somebody is, an adult child, and even
Mhm.
especially when they're out of state, they
Yeah.
don't know, um, all the pieces of who the players are that need to help them.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I'm playing the quarterback. I mean,
Mhm,
one of the cool things about me being a realtor is, like, in general, I'm sure you've worked with a real estate agent before.
mhm,
It's like you trust their referrals for anything related
mhm.
to the home. And I have all of
Right.
those referrals. But the other
Yeah.
nice thing about me is that I have all the referrals too on the senior care side as well.
Yeah.
So I know if I know when to bring in a placement agent or a
Mhm.
fiduciary, or home care or et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. I have all of those connections. So
Yeah.
being able to have that quarterback type of person on your side, and knowing who to
Mhm.
lean on and directing just everything that's happening during this crisis type of moment is, I think, is
Yep.
really key.
Yeah. Well, it's really comforting because you don't even know where to start and you don't know what rock to overturn, to see what's coming up next. So to help the family see around the corner, with the next few things, like the sticker shock of some of the care needs, because there are a variety of ways you can go about it that, depending on what their outcome they would like to have, as far as, if they are moving them or if they want to stay in the home for a period of time or whatever, you're kind of helping them see around that corner and prepare for those things. But you are an amazing resource with all those things. And that's a great point, that not only on the realtor side, a handyman and,
Right.
or the various landscapers to help prep the house for sale or whatever, but also to help a smooth transition to wherever their next landing place is, even if it's moving in with their own children, because they may need home care, something like that, to help support them in their new environment, because
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
transition for everybody.
Yeah. And side note, I mean, a lot of times now, like I've been a resource just for people, not even just even if a sale of a home is not in,
Hmm.
it doesn't come out of it, that doesn't
Hmm.
matter. I'm now
Yeah.
a resource for just all things senior living
Yeah.
related. Even my own colleagues, I'm part of the sandwich generation. It's just like
Hmm.
like I became relevant among my peers. It's like I'm of the age where I have a full time job. We all have kids, and we're conversations. It's common now.
Yeah.
In my late 40s, and we talk about our aging parents and what do we do, or
Yep.
I hear about conversations from my peers of like what's happening with their parents, and I
Yeah.
actually could speak to it and give
Yeah,
them.
yeah. No, there's a lot of authenticity around that, and people feel that. I feel that every day. I mean, as a family caregiver myself, when I talk to people, I'm empathizing with them right along the way, and I can also predict what they're gonna say next. So that
Oh, that's
helps me
true.
prepare and build trust, because it is authentic. I mean, I've said this before. There's a lot of different ways we could be making money. People that get into this type of line of work in general have a heart for helping people,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of effort that goes into it.
yeah,
So let me ask you this. So on the flip side, what are the common mistakes that people make when they start this process? And so we were just talking and helping them avoid those mistakes, or what are the things that people typically run into if they don't have somebody kind of guiding them through the process, or to help kind of Sherpa them through the
yeah.
resources and those things?
Um, Good question. So, in relation to senior transitions, I think mistakes families make are first one, waiting too long to have conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, making decisions in crisis, because when you do that, you actually have less options,
Yeah.
kind of just forced to with more limited options, and you may not even want that stuff. Number
Right.
three, underestimating care costs. Also, for not understanding all home sale options. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe lastly, just trying to do everything yourself. I mean, again,
Mm-hmm.
there's help out there.
Yeah.
Just know it's out there. You don't need to figure out alone. They just need to find the right people early.
Yeah.
So they honestly need to talk to someone like you, Tom, or maybe me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I think, one of the things when because I have resources as well. Like, one of the things when I was moving my father from his home because he was not safe at home anymore, first thing you think is just a traditional assisted living.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that more of a boarding care, a smaller home environment was a much better fit for him. But I didn't learn about those until I talked to somebody who was a specialist in this area transitioning. And so there's all of that. You just don't know what you don't know, right? You're just going
Yeah.
to you're just going to Google what you think you should do. And then you're going to get the answers that you've manifested.
Right.
And there's a whole other thing out there that you aren't even aware might be a better fit and a better solution for
Right.
you. So you said you both list a house and potentially buy it too. I mean, that seems like the ultimate in making it easy for people. So how is that, as you, from your personal approach, to be able to, if they are going to sell the house, they've got that option. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So it comes down to like three things. Let's Number one is time, is care needed immediately? Number two, the condition of the home. Does the home need major updates or not?
Yeah.
And number three, like the emotional bandwidth. Does the family have the energy to manage repairs?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so let's be real, like listing the home on the market will bring you top
Mhm.
dollar. So you can actually list as is too, because a lot of these homes you got to realize that seniors lived in,
Mhm.
it's a family home, their original condition a lot of times. Okay.
Mhm.
They're not remodeled. Sometimes they
Right.
are, but most often they're not.
Yeah.
And then even if it's not remodeled, because in the Bay Area, obviously we all know real estate's expensive here. The land is so
Hmm.
valuable.
Yeah.
Homes in original condition are going to sell regardless, even if you don't fix them
Yeah.
up. And I deal with
Yeah.
homes in original condition all the time.
Yeah.
So listing as is on the market is definitely one option, provided that
Hmm.
the seller has time. Like it's provided that they have time, as in, if they need the funds within a month and a half or so, that's definitely of time. If they needed the
Yeah.
funds, in less than 2 weeks, that's something like an as is sale, potentially
Hmm.
selling it creatively, what we call off market, where the transaction is happening,
Hmm.
not putting it on the MLS, so you won't see the
Right.
transaction on, like, you won't see the home for sale on a Zillow or a Redfin
Right.
or a Realtor.com. That is
Got it.
potentially another way of doing it. Is it the best
Hmm.
way all the time? No, it's not, because it's
Hmm.
not necessarily gonna need to net you the highest, net
Right.
proceeds. So my
Yeah.
job really isn't to push one or the other, it's just to lay, the paths out, and then clearly, and then you make a decision.
Okay. Got it. And then, so but you also personally would buy the house.
So
So,
the answer is yes, because one thing you may or may not know about me is that I'm also a real estate investor too. Like
hmm,
a lot of my over the last, I want to say the last 5 years,
hmm,
I a lot of my just client base has been or has switched from just a regular retail buyer that buys and lives in the home as the end user.
hmm.
But a lot
Yep.
of my clientele now are actually real estate developers and
Oh,
professional flippers, and even I flip homes too.
okay.
And so that's how I got really good at just homes in original condition. Okay.
Hmm.
And just one of the things that the reason why I'm actually really good at working with homes in original condition is and I've been an acquisition agent for many of these professional and rehabbers, and I had to creatively figure out ways to find their next project. Okay.
Okay.
And they wouldn't look at things that were listed on the MLS, so you wouldn't see it on Redfin or Zillow.
Right.
So I had to this is where I actually realized I was already working with seniors, because a lot of the
Hmm.
times, all of these homes that are finding in original conditions were seniors. And it
Hmm.
was either a senior that was downsizing, it was a
Yep.
senior that passed away, it was like a probate sale or a trust sale,
Hmm.
or they are moving to assisted living. So
Yep.
in finding these, I was finding, homes that needed to be moved, and I was able to work with the families. And again,
Hmm.
just dealing with the I was a lot of times just always working with the adult children and
Yep.
getting the seniors involved when needed. And that's how I know all the ins and outs of how kind of just dealing with these types of with properties.
Yeah. 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 And I would imagine that's going to be more and more. I mean, one of the reasons that I got into the senior kind of support industry is because something like 11,000 people turn 65 every single day
Oh
for
yeah,
the next 20 years or something like that. And so this is going to be a reoccurring thing. There's going to be more and more people out there that need this kind of help. This isn't going away. This is going to really start to increase, and to have a go-to resource is huge. And to have the options that you're offering,
yeah,
quick sale, I can buy it and I can
yeah.
sell it. Do we renovate it or we sell as is? I mean, those are really great experiences for you to share. And like, here's the pros and cons of each one, and they can make a really good informed decision, not try to figure it out on. So, yeah, that's amazing. What you touched upon this a little bit kind of as a high level, but what other, as they're going through this process, either transitioning or just selling the house after a death, is like, what other resources beyond the real estate do people typically need that you have on your Rolodex, on your speed dial that you can help them out with? But what are the other resources that are typical in this process?
Okay. Um, just um, piggybacking off what I was saying earlier on, like,
Mhm.
so I'm like a walking, talking Rolodex of trusted
Yeah,
professionals.
yeah.
Like realtors are, known for having referrals for everything home related, like handyman,
Yep.
etc. And again, I have that, and I take it a step further because I have those same connections in senior living, such
Mhm.
as, placement agents, home care agencies like yourself, Tom,
Yeah.
fiduciaries, estate planning attorneys, probate attorneys, care
Yeah.
manager, estate liquidators, senior
Mm.
mover. And so like
Yeah.
I help coordinate the team so families aren't using Google at midnight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like that, I don't think that's I don't yeah, I don't think that's an effective use of their time.
Exactly. Well, why don't we, like, wrap all that up into I mean, can you think of a kind of a success story that kind of like used a number of those, um, resources that you're able to help a family that's kind of a real life situation that might kind of help paint the picture for somebody? Because right now it's kind of in concept, but like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
all right.
Here's story, and it's actually tied to like my my podcast actually. So
Mhm,
it's a cool success for my podcast, and it basically brought one of these exact situations to me.
mhm,
Okay. So earlier last year, there one of it was actually my first podcast episode, believe it or not.
yeah,
I interviewed a placement agent. Okay. And for
okay,
those who of you who may not know what a placement agent is like equivalent almost to like a leasing agent in real
yeah,
estate, but they serve only the senior community. And so, a
okay,
lot of times when seniors are moving into either a smaller boarding care home or
mhm,
like a big assisted living community,
mhm,
it's a lease. And so
mhm,
they know all of the reputations of all of these communities, how much they
yes,
cost, et cetera. And it's a free service to people.
mhm,
Okay. Now,
right,
interestingly enough, when this episode with my placement agent, came on, it was my very first episode on my own podcast.
mhm,
Someone all the way in the state of Ohio heard it. Okay, I'll name her Julie. That's not her real name.
yeah,
So like Julie heard it, he saw it, got wind of it, and she didn't even know that a placement agent, existed. And when she saw
yeah,
the episode, she was like, "This sounds like exactly what I need."
yeah,
Because she's actually originally from the Bay Area. She's
okay,
from Pacifica. I grew up
mhm,
in Pacifica. Um, and she moved, she moved to Ohio years ago because
mhm,
that's where, her husband had a job or whatnot. But she had an elderly aunt, and that elderly aunt never had children. And so
mhm,
Julie was that, almost serving as that adult child, that adult
okay,
daughter who was
yeah,
coordinating everything for her aunt because the
okay,
situation was that the aunt for sure had to move to memory care. Okay. The aunt
yeah,
was living in San Mateo,
mm,
and the aunt needed the funds from the sale to be able to
mhm,
fund full time, living over in memory care. Okay.
yeah,
And this is kind of where at first she thought it needed to be a quick sale, that I needed to coordinate an off market type of sale. And then
mhm,
um, I remember, meeting Julie and her dad over at the house as well as
mhm,
the aunt. And then when I found out, honestly, they had a month and a half. I was like, we don't need to
oh,
do this off market. We actually have time.
yeah,
You're in San Mateo. This
yeah,
is so fast. Her concern was the fact that the house was a cosmetic fixer because it was
yeah,
torn wallpaper, like the flooring was all roughed up. The carpet was torn
mhm,
up in some places. And to be honest with you, I see these types of homes all the time.
mhm,
And so to me, it's not an issue. But like for somebody that's concerned, especially if they
mhm,
don't know how, what the real estate market is like,
yeah,
uh, in certain cities in the Bay Area,
mhm,
they don't know how quickly something like this would move,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
so, it just I was able to just, keep the family and keep them calm about the situation. I was like, "We're gonna have more than enough time." We ended
mhm,
up putting it on the market, I wanna say 2 weeks afterwards. Again, I hired my own, trash out people to get rid of all the stuff
mhm,
that she didn't need and whatnot. And then obviously she worked with a placement agent, that
mhm,
was on the, podcast episode
mhm,
that put her into memory care. Okay.
yeah,
And the home ended up selling we put it on the market. We ended up getting multiple offers, I think 5
oh,
offers in the first week. And then it had like a 14-day close, and
well,
it was kind of like, it was just a perfect situation of everything
yep,
that I was looking for.
yep,
Quite a success story, caught me and also taught me that just really getting this education out there, like what we're both doing through our
yeah,
podcast, is also really important for senior care. I mean,
yep,
this stuff has reach, and it's just people don't know about these things.
right. And there's no way they could have done it that fast if they didn't have you boots on the ground to
Yeah,
help through that process. So you said she's out of the area, and especially the memory care, the dementia component to it just really complicates everything because the actual senior,
it's true.
it's too challenging to get them into the mix. Sometimes you can get some preferences and things like that, but to include them in any of the decision process with dementia or any type of cognitive impairment makes it a lot more challenging. Not
Absolutely.
impossible, but especially when they're far away. So what is, I'm kind of getting a little bit to the end here to wrap soon, but like, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you think we should talk about that is important to somebody going through that process or starting that process? What's
Yep.
you know, a step they can take or, just any other thing that we might have missed here as far as what you do and just kind of peeling back the curtain here on what the reality of the situation is for people who are just maybe starting this process or
Yeah.
preparing to be part of this process.
Uh, got a few points to make here. The
Hmm.
first one is that you should start the conversation early. Talk
Hmm.
to a professional who understands the whole transition, not just one piece of it, and is just really connected and active in your local area. And another thing I wanted to say was also the fact that since I've been working with seniors, in senior related real estate, one of the thing I've
Hmm.
also really come to understand is that when families come to me with what looks like a real estate problem, it's actually usually a care problem in disguise.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're not just trying to sell the house. They're trying to
Yep.
figure out where their mom or their dad was gonna live,
Yep.
how care is gonna be paid for, how siblings are gonna work together, and what feels
Yep.
right, like, emotionally. Like, housing, family dynamics, finances, and care are all deeply intertwined, and when one
Yep.
piece moves, it's like everything kinda moves, and so what I
Yes.
see over and over again is that families they don't lack options, they lack the clarity, and I think the
Right.
clarity is hard to find in the senior care space because the information is really fragmented. There are amazing professionals out there, but families don't necessarily always know how the pieces fit together.
Right.
Like working with someone that understands that whole picture again, it really
Yep.
matters because the senior care isn't just one service, it's not just one profession. It's more like a
Hmm.
fabric, and each professional is like a fiber in that fabric, and when those
Yeah.
fibers are
Yeah.
connected, like, families feel supported instead of feeling lost.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that a lot of times they are single-minded. Okay, we got to sell the house. They can't be in the house anymore.
Yeah,
Well, that's just step one. Like you said, there's a whole cascade of other things that need to happen of where are they gonna go? Or what type of service do they need? And who do we go to find this out? And
yep,
and many times just the act of selling a house and preparing a house for sale is so overwhelming. They don't even have time to think about the other three things. So yeah, so I just, commend you on pulling together what through your podcast and just your everyday interactions with people who are seeking your services to pull this community of resources and other professionals, these other fibers
yeah,
to help create this
yeah,
blanket, to put around them because it is reassuring and it is kind of a sigh of relief that, okay, I got someone on my side. And then as they can talk to the various people. And even if they don't end up using a resource that I recommend or but it's a place to
right.
start and it gives them perspective of all of the different components that are included in all of this. So I think that's just such a wonderful service. If somebody wanted to, first of all, we're gonna have Dale's information in the show notes and everything on how to contact Dale. If you want to contact him to ask any additional questions, or if this is it sounds like a great fit for the circumstance that you're in. How do people kind of get started with you? What's typically what happens? And maybe I kind of have an idea what you're going to say, but is there ever a time too soon to get started the conversation or too late? Or is it just, when when's the
Yeah,
best time to connect and start working the process? How do
yeah.
people work
If
with
you
you?
have a question that's related to senior living, just
Mhm.
period, just ask it. Reach out
Yeah.
now. Yeah, don't wait.
Okay. Great. Great. And then if somebody wants to get in touch with you, just, we'll have the contacts, but as far as email, phone, whatever your website, whichever way they can carrier
Yeah.
pigeon, whatever way they can get to you.
Yeah. So, yeah, do I go ahead and include my contact information in show notes.
Mhm.
All my contact information is on my website, www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. I'm
Yeah.
very active on social media. You can find
Yeah.
me on Instagram at Soul by Dale. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok and YouTube and
Yeah.
Facebook. And my podcast is called Simplify Senior Transitions.
Mhm.
It's the video version of it is on YouTube. The audio only version is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other major
Mhm.
podcasts
Yeah.
platforms as well.
That's great. And I highly recommend, Dale has been, we started about the same time. Dale has been really knocking them out in a very quality way. There's a lot of volume, but really the people you're talking to has provided a tremendous resource. So I would highly recommend locking into Dale's podcast because, most of the people that you're going to need to talk to if you are in this situation are probably have been or going to be, or multiple different resources on there to help people through this process. So, hey Dale, thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it. We finally now both been on each of our podcasts, and it's been so great getting to know you personally as well as professionally, and that we're both in the same kind of supportive environment, helping people in the Bay Area. And keep doing what you're doing. Really appreciate it. And thanks again for being on Synergy Sessions.
Thank you, Tom. And I
All
appreciate
right.
what you're doing too. So thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. All right. Take care, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. Thank you for joining us on the Synergy Sessions. We know you have a lot on your plate, so we really appreciate you spending the time with us today. If you found the information in this episode useful, please reach out to the guest or the resources in the show notes. I know they would appreciate it and would love to help. Also, if you have an idea for a future episode, please reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you and provide information that's useful. Lastly, please remember, you don't have to do this alone.